Hello, everyone, and welcome back to CryptoLiveLeak. We are the #1 source for cryptocurrency news and media, and today's video is sponsored by the Tezos Foundation. We believe that Tezos will drive social, political, and economic innovation on a global scale. We have with us today President of the Tezos Foundation, Ryan Jesperson. How are you doing today, Ryan? And thank you so much for joining our channel.
Doing excellent, Ken. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. And before we begin, I would just ask everyone to please go ahead, subscribe to our channel, hit the like button on this video. Feel free to give the video a share, and then also turn on the notification button as well. So, Ryan, you have quite a crazy story here from your meteoric rise to president of the Tezos Foundation. So your story began, you were a fundraiser participant who became a little concerned with kind of the happenings of the original TF management and sort of inserted yourself in a position to be able to take over that role. Do you want to just give us a little bit of your side of the story of that whole transition process?
Yeah, sure. But let me do that and also give a little bit of background, maybe context on myself. So good to meet everybody. I'm Ryan Jesperson, and my past background, so I worked for about 10 years in the healthcare and technology industries, helping to turn around businesses that were failing. And after that period of time, those companies sold those companies and decided to do something totally different. So I jumped into the humanitarian space for about 2 years, helping to find ways to alleviate poverty and help lift people out of poverty in developing countries. So did that for a while, decided to jump back into technology, and was at a fintech startup company near Salt Lake City, and was involved there as an executive. And during that time period, there was our CTO introduced me to all things blockchain. He had been involved with Bitcoin for a very long time, involved with Ethereum since the beginning. And I'd heard about Bitcoin and this technology before, but had never really done a deep dive. And so really got to know more about the technology from this individual, and just was really excited about it, and took a deep dive and would do all that I could to learn about the technology, about the sector. Particularly for me, one thing that was exciting is, having been in the humanitarian space for 2 years, I saw the opportunity and the potential that the technology had to help in a big way in underdeveloped countries, to help things be more transparent where things aren't transparent, to help level the playing field as far as power structures, where maybe certain power structures prevent different parts of the population from receiving different types of services. And so really excited about the technology from that perspective, and just love the technology. So started to learn about it, get excited about it, and one of the projects I was introduced to was Tezos, and really excited about it once again for the technology reasons, and became a fundraiser in the last year, or 2 years ago in 2017, became a fundraiser participant during the fundraiser. And after that period of time, became concerned, I think like everybody else in the community, when there was this news about the dysfunction in the foundation. So I helped to work alongside the global community to find ways to resolve the dysfunction that was happening. So initially we thought we'd set up maybe a separate foundation, that it would help launch the protocol. Eventually, I think through that process, I became somewhat of a trusted intermediary to help solve the issues that were happening, and ultimately became president of the Tezos Foundation. So this isn't something that I aspired to do. It's not something that was really on my radar, but I really wanted to help move the Tezos protocol forward, and saw that as an opportunity to help. And I see it somewhat similarly to a lot of people in the community. So I think everyone has different talents, different abilities, different opportunities to help. And we all are doing what we can, and following the path to wherever that leads. And this is where that path led for me. And it's been an exciting ride, a kind of a crazy ride and journey. But I became president of the Tezos Foundation in February of 2018, and moved the family to Zug, Switzerland in April, so I could just be here, located in Switzerland, where the foundation was, and have seen a lot of tremendous things happen and improvements, both at the protocol level and also with the foundation. So that's kind of a little bit about my background and my story. But let me go a little bit farther, Ken, and talk about specifically the tech just briefly that got me excited. So when I heard about Tezos, what excited me was this wasn't a recent white paper that had just been written that people were just hoping to raise a bunch of funds off of. The team hadn't produced anything, but it started clear back in 2014 with a white paper written by Arthur Brightman that really outlined a few solutions to some different problems in the sector. And the cool thing about that is that these were problems that would manifest themselves but haven't necessarily manifested themselves yet. So solutions to problems like a more secure and scalable, sustainable consensus algorithm, solutions around security around the protocol, and solutions around governance of how do you really decide the future of something that's decentralized. So with Tezos's liquid proof of stake algorithm, with a focus on security, written in OCaml, a functional programming language, and really just a focus on an end goal of being able to formally verify smart contracts on chain. And then as well, the idea of on-chain governance, that the token holders themselves would decide the future of this network, and that there is this coordinated mechanism by which you would not only decide the future of the network, but by through an inflationary mechanism, the people that produce the code to improve the network can be paid independently of anything else through the protocol. So those were the problems and then the solutions that really attracted me to Tezos, and it's been exciting to see the progress on those specific solutions being solved over the last 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm extremely excited about the amendment and government process as well. That's what typically piqued my interest back in 2017 and where I became a member of the community. And I just want to give you a thank you from myself and from all of the members of the community that recognize the sacrifices you've made to go ahead and put yourself in a position to lead the Tezos Foundation forward. And we think you're doing a great job to this point. So just to set the table a little bit here for the rest of the video, we're going to go over some general questions, and then we actually have a community thread where we've reached out on a few social media links and taken some questions for the community. So we hope to get all these questions answered within the video for you guys. So
Sure.
To start out, oh, yep, go for it.
No, I said I'll do the best I can with the questions.
Okay, and on that point, let's start out with some fireworks here. I know this is what makes everyone's blood boil. Why doesn't Tezos Foundation support exchange listings for Tezos? I'm sure you have a really thoughtful answer for this, but have to ask it as a community member myself.
Sure, that's a really good question. So generally, we don't view the purpose of the foundation as pursuing exchange listings. So that being said, I think that there's a lot of developments in that area that I've seen generally throughout the ecosystem. I've been in some of the different Reddit channels and Riot, and see that different parts of the community are kind of leading the charge on that front. And I'm really positive that will kind of take care of itself. And really for me, the issue that excites me is the possibility and the opportunity for a lot of other people to join the Tezos ecosystem and community. And to do that directly by having Tezos tokens, they can be involved in the baking process and helping to further decentralize the network. And then it helps to include a lot more voices when it comes to on-chain governance and helping guide the future of the project going forward.
Okay, great answer. I won't pick any further there. And let's go on to a more positive note. So the grant process. So Tezos Foundation has famously awarded grants to specific companies that have applied and with goals to help further develop the Tezos ecosystem. So could you walk us through, like, in a normal grant approval process, what happens from your perspective?
Yeah, good question. So I'm going to give kind of a general outline, and then we will be having some more information that comes out later this month in the biannual report that really talks more in detail about this process. And we have brought on a new CFO and COO, or head of operations, I should say, at the Tezos Foundation, Roman Schneider, and he is one of the tasks that he is involved in is helping to improve this grant process, to make it more efficient, to make it more streamlined, to make it more transparent as far as how decisions are being made. But generally, I'll give you some general insight into how that works, and then look forward to much more detail. So typically, the grants will come in. We've been doing them generally as a cohort, and most recently, listing the priorities and the things that we see as important that get funded sooner rather than later when it comes to tooling and other things around the network. So there's a list of priorities. We look forward to people submitting things along those lines, but as well there are opportunities for people to submit other things that they may see as important. So those would all come in. We have somewhat recently established a technical advisory committee. So in this biannual report, it'll have more information on that in regards to that committee and how that works. And the advice that they would give to the Tezos Foundation. So they would give advice around the technical and some other merits around the proposal that's come through. There'll be an additional kind of financial legal side review by our legal team and also by Robin and his team. Then ultimately the Tezos Foundation board is responsible for making the decisions when it comes to grants. So the foundation board would then vote on the specific grants that are coming through. But typically by that time, it's really gone through a process of going through different people of different expertise to be able to give the foundation a solid recommendation so that we really have information and insight beyond our level of expertise at the foundation to be able to make the best decisions possible. So that's kind of the general outline that I'll give now, and then look forward to some more information to come. And we're constantly improving that process as well. Always welcome to input from the community as well.
As one of the staples with Tezos, it's a process that can be amended, right? So even with the governance within Tezos Foundation, it seems like the grant approval process can be amended as well. So,
but there's always going to be room for improvement, and I think that's one thing that we really recognize at the foundation, that it's not going to be a static organization. There's always room for improvement, whether it's the grant making process, whether it's communications, whether it's a variety of things. So I think a key for us is just to stay humble and keep our ears open and take both criticism and positive critique and whatever it may be, and really refine and do things better as we can and as we go along.
And I'm really glad to see that you have that attitude towards this process and really any process in general, to have the ability to stay humble and take criticism as well as positive feedback to just keep improving yourself. Arthur had a quote recently about the amendment process, the government process of Tezos. It's like a river smoothing a rock over a long period of time, right? So with anything, I think business in general is kind of like that. And it seems like you have the right mindset to be the leader here. And
yeah, no, and I would say generally just a hats off to the community as well. I think by and large, there's just a lot of thoughtful people in the community, very reasoned and who have thoughtful questions and concerns and potential solutions to problems that there might be. And so I think it's a community effort in that same disposition, whether it be within the community or the foundation, or in reference to an on-chain governance proposal as well. It's just that disposition is going to go a long way. That really this is an experience in not only technology, right, but how to bond together as a community and how to have informed and educated discussions on how to most effectively do those and hone that in over time.
Yeah, and speaking of the community, let's talk a little bit about the grantees that have already been awarded. Can you give us just an outline of some of the ones that you're most proud of? And then also an outline of some more that you'd like to see applied that have not yet applied, and like what's the need left for grant making?
Sure. There is just going to be a continual need over time. So generally, honestly, I don't know if I could single out a specific grant or set of grants. We're excited about all the grantees that we have, and there's obviously reasons by which those have received a grant. But I would say generally, some highlights that I've noticed lately, it's really exciting to see work on the core protocol being done in a very collaborative way. So to have different independent teams work collectively in a collaborative way on the core protocol is just awesome. And there was a recent blog post by Nomadic Labs. I think it was their third update. I can't remember. We'll put it in the the comments to this video. But it's really exciting to see all this happening. So this team is doing this other team is doing that. Here's this implementation of the consensus algorithm using some pieces of Tendermint. Here's these improvements to Mickelson so you can test it out. Here are these improvements to K21 addresses or whatever it may be, or to quorum caps. I think we'll see improvements as it relates to privacy and layer 2 solutions, block explorers, wallets, different solutions, just tooling. So it's maybe it's smart contract languages as well, high-level languages that people can be more familiar with and more easily pick up. Things that are Python, type languages or Python based or Pascal, type languages. So, and I think it's PyTezos and Lego respectively. But a lot of exciting things going on. I think the general thought is that we're a community of builders, and so we're building a lot of things, and I think the world will continually to recognize what's happening and all the good that Tezos is doing. Not necessarily about the hype, but about getting things done. And I think having that long-term perspective will be really helpful.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed, that Tezos definitely has the long-term perspective, and they best utilize their community out of any cryptocurrency coin community that I see out there. There's so many talented people within Tezos. There's just so many avenues for them to contribute and be rewarded for their contributions. And that part of that is through that grant making process. And we did touch a little bit on amendments to the protocol itself. So sure. I know there's already been one successful on-chain amendment, and we are going into a second phase here where we have Cryptium and Nomadic working together, which is pretty cool. But for you personally, what are you most excited to see get folded into the Tezos core protocol?
Oh, in this next amendment, I'm excited for the changes. It's called, I think it's ME+, but the changes to kind of endorsements and the consensus algorithm. I think the changes to the addresses will make things a lot more simpler for the average user to be able to get involved in Tezos. I think quorum caps are a positive thing. And it's exciting that we even need that, because the participation has been so good within the community that we're having to put some sort of cap, because everyone's participating, right? And you don't want to just use the kind of some sort of moving average on that. But really excited for that. I think beyond that, in the future, I mentioned some of them, whether it be improvements to finality through some Tendermint type improvements. Privacy features, I think, will be really exciting. Different institutions, whether they be banks or others, I think are looking to those types of solutions to be able to use a public blockchain in a meaningful way, right? You need to be able to have the option to have things public or to have things private and let the user decide whether they want to make those things public. So all those things I think are important, and beyond that, I'm excited for the years to come. I really see as Tezos being able to fold in or include improvements that are happening throughout the blockchain and the crypto sphere.
And I think what you said there is really important. To me, it lets me know that you're aware of what the outside world is watching, specifically for the amendments in regards to privacy. There are certain companies, banks, or ministries that would like to see an added layer of privacy. So that's great that you're self-aware on that point there.
Yeah, and I really think that we're going to see some good progress on that front. So I'm excited.
Very excited to see that. And so a little bit of a positive note here, a little reward for the fundraiser contributors. Tezos Foundation has come out and announced they'll be giving engraved ledgers to the fundraiser participants. Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown on how the participants can claim that ledger?
Yeah. We'll also put a link in the comments here, but generally, it's just a thank you for everybody that was that is a part of the community, and particularly that was a part of the fundraiser. We'll have this Ledger Nano S that'll be available for anybody who just verifies their fundraiser address through a mechanism via some instructions. We'll put it in the comments here. But yeah, it was generally just a thank you, and also an effort to allow provide information so people can activate their tokens, to just have as much of a robust ecosystem as possible, including a wide variety of people that are involved. So this was an effort to do that.
Yeah, and that was a really quick application there. It's just a quick interaction with the smart contract, and it just costs you a small gas fee, less than 0.005 XTZ to interact with that contract. So virtually free, giving these away.
Virtually free to get a ledger back. Back.
And I can't wait to get mine. So moving on here, let's touch a little bit. So there has been some news recently about a attempted class action lawsuit against Tezos in a California district court. Do you have any comments you want to make on that?
Generally we don't comment on that, but I will say that the Tezos community is a very strong community, global community, and we've overcome a lot up to this point. Class action lawsuits aren't going to stop us. So optimistic about the future. Frivolous lawsuits, whatever they may be, aren't gonna slow Tezos down.
That's great to hear. And moving on to what I think is going to be the golden egg for Tezos. Let's call it what it is. STOs. I think tokenization and STO standards could lead to the great rise of Tezos mass adoption. And so how do you plan to help gain adoption for Tezos STOs in this area?
Yeah. You know, first, let me back up a little bit. So I think the fact that we've been focused on that for a while, and you're seeing some of the fruits, some of those efforts bear fruits, is really a testament to I think the community, as well as the foundation and its board, of recognizing, hey, here's an opportunity. Back during the fundraiser, we just gave a blog post, for example, in regards to there's this Mars shot document that talked about potential use of funds in the future. But really, we need to recognize in the industry generally that it's just moving fast. And things that were super relevant a year ago might not be relevant now. Things that weren't relevant 3 months ago might be like extremely critical to get right now. And so the fact that we've kind of been able to identify fairly early that vertical and the importance of that, I think is great. Particularly hats off to one of the board members, Hubertus Tonhauser, who I work with closely, but he's done a lot on that front in regards to helping identify different opportunities. And hats off to all the various entities around the globe. So the TF does a lot in the background when it comes to helping find opportunities and helping to make sure that we're prepared for those. But other entities do as well, whether they be TQ or Nomadic, or entities in Asia, or different community entities, whatever it may be. A lot of people are pitching in. That being said, I think that you'll see a lot more even yet that will be done. Some interesting things to come, and some good things to come, and continue to expand that opportunity. So I think we've had a good start to that, but you ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh wow, that gets me excited. So yeah, that's really great to hear. So now let's move on to foundation bakers. So maybe you can give me the exact stats here, but the foundation is running some bakers that account for a pretty large amount of overall circulating supply of XTZ. So what's the plan for the voting power these bakers generate, and what's the plan for the XTZ that they hold?
Yeah, so we'll give out some more specific communication on this, but I think generally, as you can see from already how the foundation has voted and how it publicly represented itself on those votes, that we're really content to basically abstain and to allow the rest of the community. We have confidence in everybody's decision-making abilities, and really allowing others to take the lead on some of those things. So I think that I wouldn't expect any change in that philosophy. That's generally where we're at as far as from a voting standpoint. In regards to the baking, so the foundation does have its foundation baker nodes, you can call them, that are baking on the network. The nice thing about that is the rewards then are received back for that are held under the same mandate that the foundation has to further the Tezos protocol and to help move it forward. So it just provides the community more resources to be able to further the Tezos protocol. That being said, generally I think we're open to the idea in the future of delegating tokens, some of the foundation's tokens, and to exploring how that could work. That being said, though, I don't think that's something that's going to be on the radar for the short and maybe even to midterm at all, just because there's so much else going on, and there's a lot of complexity when it comes to how do you do that correctly. So I was on a Riot for a little bit, for example, and I asked this question, if the foundation were to delegate its tokens, what's the fairest way to do that? Well, half the community was super excited about that possibility. The other half was like super opposed to it, right? That, hey, it's going to bring up all sorts of problems when it comes to kind of voting and who you're going to give that to and how you're going to do it in a fair way. And so I think we really need to make sure that we really get farther along in the governance process, the on-chain governance process, before we introduce some other variables that are more complex. So over time, I think everyone is open to exploring different things, but there's no specific plans as of now.
Okay, that's some good insight. So basically, the war chest continues to grow as those bakers generate Tezos rewards from the baking process. So talking about the money the foundation has, can you give a little bit of insight as to what % is allocated to which assets and how much is left? I know I don't want you to give away too much. The biannual report is coming up, but
I know you're gonna have something to look forward to, right?
Yeah.
So generally I can say, I think in the last week's update, weekly update, there was a kind of a phrase in there that the non-XTZ assets are greater than 500 million. So, that's definitely the case. I think Bitcoin's taking another rise today as we speak.
It
So
is. Yeah.
that probably further increases. But generally, a significant amount of that is in crypto. A significant amount of that is in Bitcoin. But the general posture has been to, on a regular basis, to exit out of that into fiat. And so that's generally the philosophy that's been taken. We don't have any. We don't pretend to be able to know how to whether to beat the markets one way or the other in regards to those assets. So the responsible thing to do is just to just convert those on a consistent time frame. So that's what's been done, and there will be more information in that in the biannual report.
Okay, I mean, I like that answer, and you still remained exposed to the volatility of crypto assets by holding XTZ at the same time. So selling off the Bitcoin, selling off the Ethereum makes sense to go into fiat with that money as well.
Yeah, so some fiat. That being said, I mean, I don't think we'll exit completely out of Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. And so, there'll probably be more information in the biannual report, or there will be. But general, it's just reducing the exposure, right? So realize that in the fundraiser, everything that we received was Bitcoin and ETH. So it's just gradually reducing that exposure over time to a normal level.
And that'll be a great lead into the biannual report. If you guys want more information, we'll be sure to link to that report coming out soon within the next month or so, right? And let's lead us to the point of communication. You've obviously stepped up to the plate recently and have completely revamped your communication process, where you're doing the biannual report that we mentioned and also a weekly update letter. What prompted you to do this? And just explain the new format a little bit.
Yeah, I think generally there is a lot going on, so we stay pretty busy. But we heard that, hey, and recognize that communication can be improved and it should be improved. So I think it's, once again, kind of pointing back to, hey, we all got to be humble within the ecosystem. And if we realize that we can improve in some area, then we address it and we take it on and we improve. So I think this is one of those efforts. So the weekly report is an effort to just get people more insight into not only the activities of the Tezos Foundation on a weekly basis, but really to highlight the tremendous amount of things that are happening because of the grants, and then just on the Tezos protocol in general. A lot of times we'll have disparate announcements, whether they're on Twitter or just even a ground announcement from the foundation in a blog post or whatever it may be. And because they're kind of one-off and they're maybe in different disparate parts of the communication chain, if you just see these one-offs, you don't realize the tremendous amount of things that are happening even within 1 week, right? As far as improvements that they're launching. So it's an effort too to kind of to corral those and put them all together to tell people to see all the good that's happening. So generally that's the impetus behind that. So pleased with how well it's going, open to feedback. It'll continue, and I'm sure it'll get better. The biannual report is something similar. So just recognizing that, hey, it would be great to give some more detailed information as to how things have gone for the last 6 months, different things that have been funded and how those are funded and what that type of funding looks like. And generally some of the more on the inner workings of the foundation, its processes and controls and those sorts of things. So maybe some will find some of the parts of the report boring, others won't, but it's an effort to kind of be more transparent as to how things go.
No, I think it's 100% correct move, and it definitely allows current community members and prospective community members to assess what's going on within the whole ecosystem. It's a good reference point, so I think you should definitely continue forward. And so where should the community reach out to you if they have any comments on those reports?
Yeah, generally, I'm sure it'll be released and you'll see links of it all over Reddit and probably different comments in Reddit. And I pop into those mediums fairly frequently, so you're welcome to jump in there and contact me.
Okay, excellent. And so being decentralized, probably one of the most decentralized cryptocurrencies out there, how do you think Tezos as a whole can be more consistent with its branding and marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that is one of the great challenges of decentralization, right? Is that with it comes this censorship resistance and so many properties that are critical to the technology. But at the same time, realizing that generally decentralized things, they don't happen as fast, and maybe they don't happen with the same efficacy in certain realms that a very centralized entity would have, where they're very hierarchical and they're telling everybody what to do in various regions, and really just manage very strictly some sort of communications message, right? So generally there is a tension there. right? And I think we're all figuring out as a community, as a foundation, and maybe in the space in general, how to handle that. Some people have just, projects just kind of throw out the decentralization piece like out the window, and they're like, hey, well, let's just sacrifice that thing because we really want to hype this thing, and so we're just gonna hype it. And it really doesn't matter how decentralized it is. So we need to be thoughtful and deliberate about how we do that, right? So generally, a key principle is going to be this decentralization of not only the core protocol itself, but kind of the ecosystem around it, right? It doesn't make any sense to have this decentralized protocol, but when this supposed centralized entity kind of managing all the decisions on top of it. So our stance is basically that the Tezos Foundation is not a marketing entity, right? And that it provides, its primary role is to provide grants to empower the rest of the community to move the Tezos project forward. And so definitely open to others who want to put in requests for grants when it comes to kind of communications and those different things. But just be aware that it's definitely something on our radar, and that we'll be looking at ways to improve and to help it be more successful within that, definitely staying true to that goal of decentralization. So something that on our radar. But generally now, though, there is the opportunity to be able to apply for a grant, and that could be something that somebody wants a grant for. I will say generally in that realm as well, though, that it is important when it comes to comms and things like marketing and whatnot, that it be done well and that it be done right, because something that's done wrong can have a very negative and a lasting impact on the protocol. So I would maybe liken it to, I had mentioned this online to somebody, that if somebody's going to submit a grant to work on the core protocol, right, and they say, yeah, I really love the core, I want to work on it, but I basically, on the side, have learned to code PHP on the weekends and have been doing that for about 3 months, but I want a grant to work on the core. You know, that would be irresponsible, right, of the foundation to say, yeah, totally, you should work on it. It's an important thing, and you're asking for it, so, you know, here's some money for it. That really, when it comes to grants, particularly when it comes to comms and these sorts of things as well, that I think we'd be looking for people that you know, that had experience, that can do things in a professional way, in a way that's really going to be help the Tezos protocol be more successful over time.
So that's a call right there to all professional marketing firms and PR firms. Apply for a grant.
or just community groups as well. I mean, just make sure whenever we do things, we always make sure that we have the right core competencies in the group, right? So I think that would apply to grants as well.
So that actually brings up another question, just comes to mind. So if there's no qualified person within the community, such as a marketing professional, how would you approach maybe going to an outsider from the community and have them apply to your grant making process? Would that ever be done? Were you actually asking someone to apply?
The foundation itself or the community members?
So is the foundation ever going to a third party, say marketing firm, and saying, listen, we need marketing support, but our process is to award grants. Can you please apply to a grant to a third party?
Interesting, I see. You know, generally not opposed to having any sorts of parties, whether they be third party or otherwise, do that. I think the preference would be to have the community itself say, hey, we've got this idea, we've got this group, you know, we'd love to apply for a grant, and have that be done that way. But that being said, like I said, we're always looking for ways to improve, right? And within the bounds of keeping things decentralized, looking at whatever opportunities that there may be. So maybe there's opportunities there that we'll have to look at.
Okay, excellent. And so let's move on to basically the structure of the TF board. So there's been some rumblings in the community recently. Would you allow the community to hold an on-chain vote to elect new board members or a new president of the Tezos Foundation?
Yeah, very interesting. So as written in the white paper, really the design of on-chain governance is for technical protocol upgrades, right? So that is that's the purpose and design of how that works. But you do bring up an interesting question. Could that be expanded outside the bounds of what it was originally intended for, kind of different, whether it be maybe voting on foundation board members? You know, generally, Swiss foundations, there's been a tremendous amount of work to be able to get the foundation to this point, and it's really exciting to see people here in Switzerland recognize that work. So I was in Bern a few weeks ago, meeting with the government authorities, and they're really looking at the Tezos Foundation saying, hey, you guys are kind of setting the standard and the way for how this should be done responsibly. And so it's exciting to see from people viewing the foundation as, oh, initially clear back, in 2017 as kind of this disaster to now saying, hey, it's kind of the model for how things should be done right and accountable, is pretty awesome. It's pretty remarkable. That being said, it's not part of Swiss Foundation protocol necessarily to have these types of votes happen on a blockchain and whatnot. So that's not part of Swiss Foundation governance generally.
Okay, and that leads me to a follow-up question. So we obviously love the work you've been doing, and we want to ensure you're here with the Tezos Foundation going forward. So is there a current term on your presidency, or is there any contingency plans for like a re-election or appointment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So so currently the foundation is 5 board members. So we amended the foundation charter to require that there always be 5 board members, but we'd like to have a few more. And so we're actually going through a process of, we'll be adding some foundation board members, through the remainder of the year. So we have, I think, probably at least 7. And then as well, as far as me personally as president of the foundation, like I mentioned before, this wasn't something that I was like pining away at, that somehow I was like, hey, I want to be president of the Swiss Blockchain Foundation. So, I never had that expectation actually, but it was just simply a way to help. So as far as for me and for anybody, I honestly think it's best the foundation president shouldn't do this as like a career where they come to some place to like just sit and just stay for a while. So I see it more as it's not as a long-term thing at all, but more here for a specific period of time. I won't say exactly what that is, here today, but not like a long-term career type thing. But it really should be a thing where people come, they really want to help the Tezos protocol. They have the best intentions in mind to be able to do that effectively, surround themselves with competent board members, and move things forward. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, so no specific length to the contract. It's just when the time comes and the right person emerges, there'll be a transition, something like that, right?
Yeah, and I don't see it as long-term by any means, so yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people in the cryptocurrency community are speculating in 2 years, by the year 2021, that we'll have another bull market where coins are at all-time highs again, and prosperity's come back, and maybe a mass adoption has occurred. So where do you envision within 2 years Tezos Foundation and Tezos in general?
Interesting. So I see us. So let's start with 2 things. Let's start first with the Tezos Foundation, and then second, and most importantly, with the Tezos protocol. So first with the Tezos Foundation, I see that over time, out of necessity, all the board members, we revamped the board in the first part of 2018, and out of necessity, a lot of us, particularly myself initially, just jumped in operationally, just like all hands on deck. Let's just get this thing going. And if you remember at that time, it was questionable as to whether funds would be flowing to the developers. When would this thing actually launch? So kind of all hands on deck, and a tremendous amount of time and effort to get to the beta net launch. So we had represented that it would be in Q2, and I think we launched with like 2 or 3 hours to spare, right? It's like crazy schedule, hours, so many wonderful people just pitching in to help. It was really remarkable to be a part of. But so we've had to kind of go through this phase of really everybody in the trenches, all hands on deck. But I think going forward, as far as the foundation, what you'll continually see is us building out more of a team at the foundation that can handle operational type things. So with Roman coming on, for example, you'll see others come on in the future, that kind of the team being kind of beefed up a bit, so that the foundation kind of steps back, or the foundation board, I should say, steps back a little bit more, and is more of of just kind of a board role that's kind of making more high-level decisions, but the execution and the operations and day-to-day are more by a team that's been hired for specific purposes. I think you'll see that as a trend going forward. I think you'll see the foundation be accountable, responsible, transparent. I think that's going to be a great thing for the community and the ecosystem. It will continue to be a model for how things should be done, both in Switzerland and globally, and people will be able to rely that this is steady method by which funds can be received by the rest of the community for a long time, as far as developing new tools and different things that need to be funded to help Tezos be a success. As far as how long, I don't know, but definitely it'll be around for a good while to be able to provide resources to the ecosystem. Now, I would say the second part of that question, as far as the Tezos protocol. So interestingly enough, at lunch we were just talking about this topic, and I see Tezos network. You said 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm projecting forward, and I would say that a continual focus. I think over the next 12 to 24 months, we're going to see a lot happening in the STO side of things, just generally, right? That is a real use case that people will be able to use, and maybe one of the first real use case that's widely used, right? So we had kind of this ERC20 craze, right, on Ethereum, which everyone said, hey, this is the method by which things are funded. It's the new way of doing things. And then I think people realized, well, wait, there's a lot of money going out the window, but not a lot of results to what is happening, and kind of a lot of scams and hype things were happening. And it just wasn't something that was sustainable. So arguably the first kind of widespread use case, but definitely not sustainable. So the difference that I see with the STO side of things is it could be kind of the first widespread use case that is sustainable, right? Where it's like, hey, this thing isn't going to be a flash in the pan, but it's going to build and it's going to build and it's going to build. And so I think we'll see continued focus on providing resources to help make sure and do our best to make sure that that the Tezos protocol is at the forefront of that movement that's happening. I think, in addition, I think we'll see things happening around gaming, which is interesting. Gaming, typically, online gaming seems to just be at the forefront of technology adoption and innovation. So I see definitely a role for blockchain tech there. When it comes to payments and things, it'd be interesting. I see a lot of room for things like stablecoins and other things to be applied to the Tezos technology, and to have really the opportunity to use not only Tezos tokens, but a stable coin as well for different payments and those types of things. I mean, how cool would it be to have your everything in your own wallet, your bank's in your wallet, and you've got stable coins of a variety of currencies, you've got your Tezos tokens that can be banking and earning rewards, and then an increasingly variety of different applications that can be used, can use the tokens as well, whether it comes to kind of online gaming or a variety of other things. So I think generally that's the direction. I think things around payments and finance and lending and that sort of thing, and then the other things I mentioned.
Yeah. And one area I don't think's been exploited enough in a positive manner has been the escrow accounts that can be KT1 delegated banking accounts that can be generating an interest. So there could be a financial app where it's feeless to use for the users, but in the intermediary channels, you have these KT1 escrow accounts that maybe money sits in for transitional periods, and that's how the app owner or app creator can make money. Just off this escrow account. This can be the same as we saw, a coffee bean farming app that just won the hackathon here in Boston. Abadiza Abba was a Tezos project, and basically had come up with an idea of putting a supply chain for coffee farmers in Africa on the Tezos protocol, and then also using escrow accounts to generate revenue while providing a free service for the farmers and the supply chain users. So,
yeah, interesting idea. Yeah, that's cool.
But going back to the tokenizing, the STOs, you mentioned that when Ethereum had the craze with the ICOs, you're basically giving Ethereum and getting in return projects, tokens that are tied to their future prospects. So now with the difference with an STO, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there'll be companies looking to raise money that have real estate or a real world asset that's going to be represented in terms of a token ownership, and that will be your security token. Will users be able to give Tezos to a contract and then have that contract spit back these security tokens representing whatever real world assets? Is that the involvement of XTZ in the process? Or if not, can you explain it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I don't know the exact details, and I don't know if anybody does in regards to exactly how this is going to all shape out on the industry on the different blockchains. But I think generally what we're seeing now is a lot of interest in people building their tokenized asset product on top of Tezos due to reasons around the security of the protocol, the smart contract language, on-chain governance. These people want to be able to trust that, hey, there's a mechanism by which this thing is going to be improved and is going to be upgraded in the future, and can see that, hey, it's a consensus algorithm that it makes sense that most everything's moving to proof of stake anyway, so this thing already is proof of stake and has plans to improve. So just they see it as as a protocol that's kind of at the forefront of these different areas. So I think we'll definitely see a lot more interest in that. As far as the specific method by which that'll all work, and these different security tokens are exchanged on the secondary markets, and initial offerings are done. I think there'll probably be a lot of experimentation by different entities doing that, but that's not my domain. So
okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I tend to look at things as more like an economic perspective, like what's going to put buy pressure or sell pressure on the asset being XTZ. So for instance, you have Omni, which is a chain that Tether was built on, and Tether is what, $4 or $5 billion worth of real world, in quotations, real world assets representing the Tether token. But Omni itself, the platform that Tether was tokenized on, is worthless essentially. So I just intend to want to know more details on how XTZ will be used in the STO process. And I think we are going to get some documents released by community members, by some of these other companies that are involved in the process in the next month or so here.
Yeah, and I think that is a good exercise, but as well, I think we have to realize that we're in early days, right? So if you were to go back to Amazon in the early days and say, hey, you're selling books, right? And this is kind of their only revenue stream, right? So, why should it have this valuation, or what is the prospect for this company? Because you essentially sell books, right? You're creating this platform to be able to do this. Well, if you were to just have that myopic, that narrow mindset back then, you would have missed the future of what Amazon would become, right? And I think it's somewhat similar in the space. The space is going to be huge. STOs will be huge. There's going to be new sectors and things created within the space that we can't even imagine now. So I think being able to showcase that this blockchain is very suitable for something to be used for large institutions, or maybe even governments, or large, whether it's banks or businesses or whatever it may be, that this is a prime target to come to for something so important as to tokenize a real world asset. You need to have a lot of security around this. I think there's a lot to be said about that, about saying, hey, it's kind of showcasing what Tezos can do, kind of putting it at the forefront of this industry. And there's going to be so many opportunities, so we have to be careful not to say, hey, it has to have this specific value proposition and valued in the specific way, because our minds don't even know yet what's coming. We seek to definitely be a huge player in many different parts of the ecosystem in the future. STO is just being a piece.
So definitely excited to hear more on that. So you may have already done this in that answer, but give me your best elevator pitch on why Tezos is better than Ethereum.
Yeah, I think I've stated it throughout, but generally those are the reasons that attracted me to Tezos clear back in 2017, and they still are. And they become more exciting to me because it's not only something that was on a white paper, years ago, but it's stuff that has actually been implemented. And there's actually a lot of projects who you can't go to their white paper and say, actually, that's been implemented and it's working and it's functioning now. So things around the liquid proof of stake algorithm that already has been proven, I think, fairly successful. So when you look at it and you say, okay, there's over 450 validators or Baker nodes across the world. You've got over 100 different businesses in over 30 countries who run these validating Baker nodes that have just kind of, self-evolved, over the last months. To have that all happen organically is just incredible. So to look at the liquid proof of stake that's working really well, economics look to work well, that's already in its second iteration with improvements with Tendermint, and then to look at the focus on security from the ground up, written from scratch in a functional programming language, OCaml. It's not a fork or a copy of something else. There's also a smaller subset of projects that have actually done that. It's more of like Bitcoin and Ethereum, right, where they kind of wrote it from the ground up. But we had the advantage to say, or the foresight, I guess, to say that, hey, we really should have a focus on security. So you've got Nicholson, which is kind of a OCaml-like, language, domain language, and then we will have, high-level languages that compile down to this, and different verification tools that surely surround this, the language ecosystem. So this focus on security, I think, is important, because no business or entity or government's going to build on something that has been hacked or could very likely be hacked. They've got to have some proof or some assurance that these things are going to function as intended. So I think the focus on security is great. Yeah, so I see definitely, and in regards to kind of formal verification of smart contracts and potentially even pieces of the code base, the core code base itself, a lot of connections with INRIA and other institutions that will make some great inroads in that area. And then I really look at the on-chain governance. It's going to become increasingly important. This question of how do you decide that something that is the future of something that's decentralized. Some different projects say, hey, we're just not going to think about it, or any type of governance solution that you might have is just evil and bad because this, and that. You know, people that are wanting to build on something that they are going to put serious assets and resources into, either building the solution or ultimately maybe it's the asset that's tokenized there, want to know that there's a method by which this thing is governed, especially when they're hearing in the news about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash forks, about Ethereum and Ethereum Classic forks, and these types of things. So to be able to continually prove out that on-chain governance mechanism, I think is a really powerful differentiator and will become more important as time goes on. So I would say that's important. And then also this funding of improvements to the base layer protocol, right? So I don't think this gets enough attention. So essentially, we're providing a new way to solve this tragedy of the commons problem in open source software. So as you know, the base layer protocol for the internet, TCP/IP, is tremendous innovation, and it's used in a tremendous way to be able to exchange information freely right across the internet. And these different companies have built on top of that and extracted a lot of, or created a lot of value, whether it be you know, Amazon or Google or Facebook or whatever it may be. But when you look at that base layer protocol, there's not a lot of incentive to improve that thing. The incentive more is to build something on top of it. And that's where the value accrues. So we see this problem especially acute in the crypto world, in the blockchain world. So look at the value of Bitcoin. We talked before in the podcast, I think it's up, you know, higher today, but you know, hundreds of billions of dollars, right, is the value, total value of this this asset. And when you look at the size of the development team working on the core protocol, it's incredibly small for the size of the asset. And I think Ethereum deals with the same thing, where you have a lot of value there, but the core protocol work and the teams and the funding for that, number one, it's kind of finite, and it's unsure as to how much funding there would be. And then the incentive, at least in the past, was much more to launch an ERC20 token on top of that and to extract all this value immediately, rather than to focus on the core. I mean, who cares, you know, when you know, as far as throughput or transactions and all this, when you're going to do ERC20 and you know, and be gone in a couple months. So with Tezos, I see this as incredible innovation, where you actually have this mechanism through on-chain governance by which anybody can bring a code to the Tezos protocol, to the code base. The community can vote on it, and the reward or the payment for that code can be paid directly by the protocol to the person bringing the code, and invoices attached to that proposal. And that's a really, really powerful idea to say, hey, you don't just build, like, launch necessarily a token on top of it, or build something on top of Tezos, although that can be done, but there's more of an incentive to improve the core protocol itself. So when it comes to whether it's privacy features or scaling features or a variety of things, there's a huge incentive to be able to take what innovations are out there and to be able to wrap those into the Tezos protocol itself. I mean, just think about it. If you can have, you know, swap out, you know, in 3 years, this latest and greatest consensus algorithm, or there's this incredible privacy feature, or whatever it may be, and you could swap that out on Tezos through an upgrade, and that could significantly improve the you know, the functioning of the protocol, and thereby its value. That would be a huge opportunity for developers, right, to participate in this new process, this invoicing process by which you could bring code to the code base and be paid out in Tezos tokens. So I'm really excited to see how that plays out. I think it's kind of bootstrapping itself now. With the Athens proposal, you saw, I think it was 100 XTZ were attached to the proposal, and I see that continuing to evolve over time. So for me, that's really exciting as well. It speaks to me of sustainability and kind of long-term viability of the protocol in a way that we haven't seen in open source technology before. So those would be some of the differentiators that I would see.
Yeah, and I think that inflationary funding mechanism for self-protocol upgrades is really not garnered enough attention from the developer community yet. Yeah, they know about it, But I think once maybe the first $1 million proposal goes through, then it's really going to grab their attention. You're going to see a lot more people bidding for the next upgrade. So I'm really excited to see on that front what comes next.
Totally agree with you. I can't wait till that happens.
So now we are at the part of the cast here where we're going into the community questions. So we posted a post on a few social media accounts yesterday, and this is what we got from the community. So you might recognize some of these names. Some of them are OG Tezos community members. So let's see. First, starting out, we have Chad G at Chad GOE. How does Ryan see the foundation evolving over the next couple of years? We sort of already answered that. What's been the biggest challenge this year? And what opportunities do you envision Tezos? And what's a realistic time frame for these opportunities?
Yeah, I think I covered a lot of that in the discussion. So I'm trying to rethink those. Can you repeat those again?
Yeah, maybe just what's been the biggest challenge so far this year?
Of this year, I would say generally, just wanted to make sure that we take the time to get things right at the foundation. So starting that process of making sure we have the right people in place to build out that team here at the foundation, allowing the foundation board itself to focus more of at the board level and not be involved so much in operational details. It takes a bit to find the right personnel, and I think it's taken a lot of mind share, and so it's kind of been a little bit slower on some of the comms and the other things than we would like to have been, but I'm encouraged that a lot of that is improving. The community is able to see the different STOs come through the pipeline and the comms improving. So a lot of that is improving, but it's just we're really developing how this type of foundation would work, right? And we have people kind of looking to us to make sure that we get it right. So it kind of takes time to do that, and sometimes if you're just not in the trenches, it's hard to understand, like, why does this take so much time, or why does that take so much time? So appreciate the understanding of the community, but I would say generally that would be it. Looking forward in the future, just excited about, I think, the direction, the long-term viability of Tezos, really taking advantage of this kind of the STO opportunities that are there, and the continual upgrades are really exciting to me. I can't wait for this next proposal period to happen, to see what's going to be proposed, and to see several cycles of this upgrade mechanism prove itself. I think is going to be really exciting, and it will increasingly see people on the outside take notice.
Yeah. And next we have from at TZ Bake Oven. What's the most inspiring thing about the Tezos ecosystem development you've seen so far?
I'll just say generally, I think it's just really cool to be a part of the Tezos community generally. So it's just very different from potentially other communities in the space. A lot of thoughtful people, a lot of committed people. I don't know if there's any other project where a regular community member is the head of the foundation, that where the funds were received for a project. But I think that's not a testament to me. It's a testament to the entire community. We've all done it together, right? And so just to be a part of that, to see people from all over the globe, to see something unite people over different, whether it's language barriers or country barriers or whatever it may be, it's just exciting to see that happen. I think we'll continue to see that happen in the future.
Yeah. From at Dragon Master XTZ.
Yeah.
Why has the PwC audit not yet been published, and when will it be made available?
Yeah, good question. So the PwC audit, probably this can be clarified more. So the audit is a statutory audit. So the purpose of the audit is done by an independent external auditor, and that's done for statutory reasons. So we are overseen by the Supervisory Foundation Supervisory Authority here in Switzerland, and so that that audit is for that entity, and it's only for that entity. But that being said, the foundation is in the process of releasing voluntarily additional information publicly. So you'll see in the biannual report, this is that effort to help with accountability and transparency of what's happening.
Okay, excellent. And from at Citizen B, could there please be a swift TF procedure for Tezos OGs to receive travel funds in order to support building Tezos meetups in other continents, maybe even allocate of 3 to 6 travel vouchers so an organizer can apply for and then travel to their favorite spots, or their meetups could bring in their favorite Tezos OG. So basically, Citizen B is looking for travel vouchers for the community members that have been around since the beginning.
You have 2 parts to that question. So all questions are great questions to some extent, right? So definitely we'll answer it. I would say the first part of that, we really need to be aware as a community that Tezos is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the community is going to get a lot bigger. And we have to make sure that and I have confidence that we'll do this, is welcome new members with open arms, and to make sure to not kind of isolate different parts of the community because somebody has been there since the beginning, right? Or somebody hasn't. You'll hear that all the time at Bitcoin, right? Like, I was there since the beginning, and so that somehow gives me this specific authority, and kind of alienating those that have come later on that maybe are just as passionate, but just happen to hear about it later or be involved later for some reason. So generally, we just need to, I think we all just need to be aware of that and just very inclusive of people whenever you heard about or joined the Tezos community. But beyond that, I would say, there's a grant process. And so if somebody can make a valid, case for why something should be done, I mean, submit a grant. So.
All right, Citizen B, let's see you submit a grant. All right, next we have Helix N at Crypto 1986. Yeah. So he is inquiring about an entity that would get grant money to push Tezos marketing and XTZ exchange listings, such as a Binance or a Coinbase. Would you be for something like this? An entity to apply for a grant for something like this?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I would generally not say that we're for or against any specific type of proposals, but just that we like to be fairly open-minded. And so if you have an idea, you have a proposal, you've got a team to back it up, and you can kind of really prove the relevance to the Tezos protocol and the importance to it, then submit a grant.
Yeah. And I think the important thing there is a team to back it up. So are you the right person for the job? Don't just apply because you see a need, but make sure you're the right person for that job as well. Totally. And we have next up Camille Saliba at CAMSALIBA. What's the future of Tezos as an investor in the Tezos ecosystem? What should I expect from it?
Okay, so let me rephrase that question. So for me, I would ask, as a fundraiser participant, what is the, what can I expect of being a community member in the Tezos ecosystem? So I would say generally there's opportunities for everybody to get involved. So generally, of course, the foundation is doing this Ledger Nano S kind of giveaway to recognize those people that contributed to the fundraiser and their involvement in the community. But generally, the Tezos community is different. It's a community of builders. It's a community of people that look for opportunities to help out, that look at themselves, the different talents and abilities that they have, and they say, hey, I can help out in this way or that way. I mean, just like you can, right? Saying, hey, look, I can help with meetups in Boston, or I can help with these videos, kind of highlighting different parts of the ecosystem, these interviews, but different people using their talents to further the protocol. So that's generally how I see kind of the approach of the Tezos community.
Yeah, and that definitely differentiates us from other blockchain projects. The community itself is so vibrant and willing to step forward and help wherever they can. So that's what builds a strong community, and we recognize that here with Tezos. So last question we have from the community poll here is Jonathan Snowden at NoJSnow 2016. When will the biannual report be released?
Oh, good question. So we've represented in July, pushing everybody internally that it's got to be July. So expect it later in July, probably towards the latter end.
The latter end, so maybe the very last day, just like the mainnet or the beta net.
Yeah. No, but we'll be in communication on how that's going, and that's the expectation.
Excellent, Ryan. So that's all I have for you. Is there any closing comments you'd like to make?
No, just generally, thanks for the interview, the thoughtful questions from the community, and it was fun. And just appreciate the whole community. Really, the power of Tezos lies in just a group of passionate and a really intelligent and smart group of builders all across the world. So it's just I'm humbled to be a part of the community, and thanks for the support.
Excellent, Ryan. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show here today. We really appreciate it. Again, today's show was sponsored by Tezos Foundation. They believe that Tezos will drive social, political, and economic innovation on a global scale. Thank you for watching Crypto Live Leak. My name is Ken Garofalo, and until next time, take care.
See you guys.